Now that we know what the requirements are to not evolve, let's look a little closer at the things that do cause populations to change. We could simply state that if any of the requirements for Hardy-Weinberg equilibrium are not met, then the population is evolving. This is true, but some of the deviations from equilibrium have greater effects on populations than others. Mutations directly affect genes by changing the actual DNA. However, they do not usually have a large effect on the population. Most mutations end up actually being neutral. Non-random mating is when individuals choose mates based on preferences. Sometimes this can have a big effect if the preferences can be affected by natural selection, which we'll look at in the next section. However, most often, mate choice does not produce large changes in populations. If natural selection is occurring, then the population is evolving. Natural selection is the main driving force for evolution. We will talk about this more in detail in the next section. Genetic drift usually occurs if the population is small. The smaller the population, the more likely it is that the chance alone will cause changes in the frequency of alleles. When you get some time, click on the link in the PowerPoint to go to a genetic drift simulator. You can play around with the different sizes of populations and see how alleles can be fixed or are much more stable in larger populations than in smaller populations. There are two specific examples of genetic drift, the bottleneck effect and the founder effect. The bottleneck effect happens when a large population is suddenly wiped out and only a small number of members survive. It's as if the beads in the bottle represent all of the alleles, or the gene pool. The original population has purple alleles, green alleles, and orange alleles, and they're all relatively equal, purple and green, and there are fewer orange. Something happens, like a catastrophe or a hurricane or some sort of dramatic change, and only some of the individuals survive. In this case, only 4 are purple and 1 green. This is simulating, it's called bottleneck because it's similar as if you tip a bottle quickly and only pour out a few genes. These represent the survivors. So none of the orange or yellow beads survive, so that gene is going to be lost in the new population. The new population also has more purple than green, which is different from the original population, which had about an equal amount. Something like this could be caused by a huge natural disaster, such as a fire or a hurricane. The founder effect is also an example of genetic drift. This happens when a small population breaks off and moves somewhere else. You can see our original group of butterflies with the orange, brown, and white colors. 3 of them moved to a new island, and they just happen to be orange and brown. So the population of butterflies that will live on this island is going to look different from the original population because there are no white butterflies. The founder effect has happened whenever humans first settled in an area. The last mechanism for microevolution is called gene flow. This means migration. Immigration is when individuals move into a population. They bring with them genes that may not have been there before. Emigration, with an E, is when individuals move out of a population. They are taking their genes with them to their new population. The pink beetle, or reddish pink, in the picture is immigrating to the brown beetle population. This will increase the frequency of pink beetles in the brown population.